Welcome back, pet parents. I am so excited for today's episode because, as y'all know, we have been talking a lot about supplements because you've asked me a lot about supplements, and I get it. It's like a minefield out there. And one supplement or group of supplements, kind of, that is all over the place, it's really, really hot topic right now, is mushrooms. We have a lot of questions about mushrooms, and rightfully so, which is why I'm so excited to bring you Dr. Silver and Joni from Real Mushrooms. Welcome to the Pet Parenting Reset. I'm so excited to have you both here today.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be here, yeah.
So, mushrooms for dogs, mushrooms for cats, mushrooms for humans. I mean, even as humans, we have no idea how to eat and be healthy. Let's be real, right? And we often overlook a lot of the actual benefits of a lot of foods that, even though like we can eat them and there's a lot of nutritional benefit, but then there's also a lot of medicinal benefit to a lot of plants that most people today don't have any idea about. And even someone like me who does their best to spend a lot of time learning and researching, it's still like herbalism is a mystery to me. I'm trying to add this to my repertoire, but Real Mushrooms, I know for me on social media, the ads have been popping up everywhere and people are talking about them everywhere, and people that I follow are using Real Mushrooms. So I was so excited to have both of you on. Would you please, maybe we can start with Dr. Silver, just introduce yourself really quickly so that our listeners know who you are and can trust you.
Okay. Well, I am, and thank you for having us on today, Jessica. It's a great opportunity to help educate pet parents everywhere, about the value of mushrooms. I'm a veterinarian of over 40 years licensed in Colorado, and I have a special interest in mushrooms. I worked in mushrooms and herbal medicine and supplements. I worked for a veterinary company for 25 years, designing their formulas for veterinarians, and joined Real Mushrooms about 18 months ago because I also share this burning interest in the value of mushrooms. And Real Mushrooms really is, and I'm not doing this promotionally, really is the best company in the world in terms of their production of the highest quality organic mushroom extracts. We cultivate them. Our parent company, called Namex, or a Canadian company, cultivates them under USDA organic standards in China. We triple test. We test everything to ensure that it's absolutely clean, and of course it meets USDA organic standards. And then we extract them to exacting standards to keep the potency very consistent from one batch to the next. And we sell them in a variety of different formats to make it easier for people to take them themselves or to give them to their pets. And so I'm kind of a nerd, and I'm just really nerding out over all the amazing science that mushrooms contain. And when I'm talking with pet parents, I try to simplify it a bit, but sometimes my enthusiasm gets the better of me. And I think the only person more enthusiastic than myself about mushrooms is Miss Joni right here. Yes.
Yeah, well, I think we would match each other, Doc Rob. I've been, we have our favorite. We might fight over which our favorite mushrooms are, but I think we're both pretty passionate. And yeah, so my background is different than Dr. Silver's. Of course. I got into integrative medicine. So back in 1996, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I'd been living growing up, I did not take care of my health. I was a bartender. I ate, I ate the burritos out of the 7-Eleven, for dinner on a regular basis, and, just didn't really think much about my my health. And then I developed cancer. And coincidentally, at the same time, my dog was diagnosed with mammary cancer. And so I had a surgery. I had a very, very, very large cancer-filled cyst removed along with an ovary. And then for whatever reason, I didn't know anything about integrative medicine, but I turned down all other conventional therapies. And so I had to figure out what to do next. And that's how I entered into kind of holistic medicine, first for myself, but then I started, doing the same things I was doing for myself with my dog, Waffles. And, here I am, more than 25 years later. Clearly, I made the right choice. I got very lucky. It was probably a very early stage for my cancer. And my dog, Waffles, lived another, I think, 8 or 9 years. So that really opened me up to holistic therapies. I went back to school to become a registered veterinary technician at the age of 40. And then became a canine rehabilitation therapist, and then got into the supplement business, working with veterinarians, teaching them about nutrition and herbs back in 2011. And then when I heard that Doc Silver had joined Real, I started to get involved, excited about mushrooms a couple years ago. And when I heard that Real Mushrooms was launching their pet line and that Dr. Silver was going to be formulating and kind of heading up the team, I was very excited. He's such a wonderful teacher and mentor. And so here we are. Yeah. And I agree, like with what Dr. Silver was saying, Real Mushrooms is the gold standard, for mushrooms. And that is the reason. Previously, I worked for Standard Process and MediHerb, which are also very high quality companies. And I looked for the best mushrooms out there, and I'm very happy with my choice.
Awesome. Well, okay. You kind of hinted a little bit, Dr. Silver, that you can get a little too excited and nerd out and kind of talk way over where people are. And I'm just going to have to admit right here, right now, that I am that person. I need you to bring it down. Bring it down for me. Because I need to understand the basics before I can really get into like the big picture concepts. And I think one of the things that a lot of people get tripped up on, the average person, because that's what I'm here for, to talk to the average pet parent, is we know that we can't just let our dogs wander around and eat any mushroom they find, right? There is a big difference in random mushrooms, especially when we don't have any idea how to identify a mushroom in the wild versus medicinal mushrooms or culinary mushrooms. Can you explain that to me just a little bit?
I can. Mushrooms are part of the kingdom of fungi, the fungal kingdom. And we have the animal kingdom, us, and all the animals in this world. We've got the plant kingdom, and we've got the fungal kingdom, 3 separate kingdoms. And the fungal kingdom includes, molds and mildews, but also includes the fungi that become mushrooms. Mushrooms play a very important role in our world because they consume dead and dying material, and they recycle it into nutrients that living plants or living animals can use. So as part of, they're very complicated organisms, and as part of their growth cycle, they produce these very highly active molecules in the mushroom that can benefit health. And by benefiting health, they also can help with diseases. We don't really say they treat diseases so much as they strengthen the individual, so the individual system is able to do that for themselves. So the mushrooms contain these fibrous elements that have an immune stimulating effect on people, on animals, even on animals as primitive as earthworms. They're using these fibrous materials called beta glucans to help improve earthworm farms, for soil improvement. Also in fish farming, they're putting beta glucans into fish farming because it improves the growth rate of the fish and reduces disease. Likewise, they're starting to use them in livestock production instead of antibiotics because there's too many antibiotics being used. That's one reason we have so many um, bacterial resistant infections that are going on. So there's many molecules in these mushrooms. And so some mushrooms, the molecules they produce are poisonous to humans and could be poisonous to animals as well. Some are very poisonous, but they're only a small percentage of the total number of mushrooms that are out there. But it's a big percentage if you happen to pick one and eat it, or if your dog, after a rain, we should be so lucky as to have some rain with all this heat, right? But after some rain, the mushrooms come up in the backyard. These could be very toxic mushrooms. And so most veterinarians, the first time we have an experience with a mushroom is usually when the dog comes in sicker and crap for having eaten some mushrooms in the backyard, maybe on the verge of death. So that's why many veterinarians think negatively about mushrooms, and so do many people as well. Think of them as toadstools and as poisonous, and maybe their parents, frightened them as kids when they would go outside and play. Don't eat any mushrooms. So there's this whole, we call this mycophobia, and we're here to help explain which are the good mushrooms and which aren't. Now, if you're purchasing mushrooms from a company like Real Mushrooms, you don't have anything to worry about because we cultivate the mushrooms. We know exactly what they are. We've been doing this for 40 years, and we know they're safe and we know they're effective. So our recommendation is not to pick any wild mushrooms, and especially don't eat them. You need to be pretty expert in them in order to do that, and that takes experience, not just reading a book or using an app, but also going out with people who know and actually looking at the mushrooms and learning how to identify them.
And if I can just add, the general rule of thumb is if a mushroom is safe for a human, it's generally safe for a dog and cat. So if you're looking at culinary mushrooms, for like Dr. Silver said, if there's a supplement company that's selling mushrooms, of course, they're not going to be poisonous. But even when you're in the grocery store and you want to add mushrooms to your pet's diet, all of the mushrooms that you can find at the grocery store are going to be safe. Although, as with adding any new food, you're going to want to do it small, small amounts, so as not to cause any digestive upset.
And what's interesting? I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of the grocery store is that I just read a paper yesterday. Even those little white button mushrooms that you get, they seem so common. You get them in salad bars, although you shouldn't really eat them raw like they are served in salad bars. There was a paper yesterday about its ability to treat prostate cancer. It's like, yeah, little white button mushrooms. So, that's the power of the good mushrooms, the mushrooms that aren't poisonous, which are most of the mushrooms. And so, yes, you could certainly go to the supermarket and buy your white button mushrooms. Where we're getting shiitake mushrooms now in our supermarket, which have, very great immune modulating properties as well.
Another concern I see a lot is that people are concerned about psychedelics in mushrooms because we just don't know. We have no idea. We hear these buzzwords and see people like Joe Rogan, who is, arguably the most popular person in the world, and he talks about taking mushrooms as psychedelics. And so again, we're not even in that realm, right? Like we have no concern here.
Whole different category, and because psychedelic mushrooms are becoming so valuable, I don't think you're going to accidentally get anything in any sort of mushroom product unless it's labeled specifically for that. And of course, there's legal issues as well as intoxication issues with it. But we are learning even more about the psychedelic mushrooms that if you don't use them at the dosage that gives you those trips, you use them at a very low dosage, they actually seem to have some benefit, especially with people who have anxiety or depression, helps with cognition, helps with creativity. I just came back from a conference this past week, psychedelic science, and I learned all the science that underlies it, and it's huge. I mean, it's really fascinating. But that's not really what we don't do that. We're not. Our parent company in Canada does have a license with Health Canada, which is the Canadian FDA, to cultivate psilocybin mushrooms for medical practitioners in Canada to use with their patients for psychological benefits. But with real mushrooms is not involved in that aspect of it at all. So not to worry
No,
about that either. But that's a good question,
yeah, but I will add though, because I
Okay.
find it fascinating that I think within the next decade or two, psychedelics are going to find their way into veterinary medicine for the reasons that Dr. Silver mentioned. In small micro doses can have, I think there are actually some kind of underground clinical studies happening around dogs, with PTSD, anxiety, aggression issues, things like that. Um, I'm not I'm not saying we're anywhere near that. I'm just saying that it's not out of the realm of possibility that, on your podcast, you might be talking about this in a decade or so, or maybe even sooner.
I mean, dogs with PTSD, with anxiety, with, phobias, I, I feel like pet parents are willing to do just about anything. So,
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
own dog has PTSD. He's a rescue dog. He was found actually south of Houston in a little town called Alvin, Texas. He had a broken leg, a dislocated hip, kill shelter, and he's got he's a lab. He's very needy, but he's also very scared as well. And so I'm actually planning on trying to microdose him. I'm in Colorado where it is decriminalized, so I feel comfortable in that regards. And I wouldn't feel comfortable trying something I've never tried before on on a client's animal. I would like, using it on my own, I feel most able to control it. So I'm planning on doing that and seeing how it will benefit him. We'll see. I could report back once we get some findings.
Yeah,
oh my
and
God.
you're in good company, Dr. Silver, because I mean it's like Harvard, Johns Hopkins, came, all of these
Yeah.
very, very prestigious colleges and institutions are studying psilocybin right now. And I know it's not what this podcast is about, about magic mushrooms, but I think it bears, talking about that,
Yeah.
to take the stigma away from, it's important because these are, with the number of people that are dealing with mental illness and depression and you name it, and the number of pets out there, if there's something that can help, and going back to your original comment, in your intro, Jessica, when you were talking about like not knowing a whole lot about herbs and what to do. I mean, there's a cure in the beauty of nature is that there are cures out there for pretty much everything that ails us and our pets. And one thing that I have found to be fascinating is often the cure is very near. Like, let's say there's a plant that is poisonous or something like that. The cure is often very nearby. Nature has an intelligence about it, and so these plants are here for a reason, and the fungi are here for a reason as well. And it's fun to work with Dr. Silver to get the word out about how to utilize them, the legal, safe ones.
So with real mushrooms, we are talking about medicinal mushrooms, correct?
We're using the term functional mushrooms now, Jessica,
Okay.
simply because the FDA doesn't like you to make medical claims about supplements, and calling a mushroom medicinal is inherently is a claim. So we're shifting over to calling them functional mushrooms, which would differentiate them from culinary mushrooms. Although some culinary mushrooms also have functional value, like we just mentioned, the button mushrooms, the shiitake mushrooms, which are very tasty, but they have great value to the health of your body.
So how do you use them in veterinary practice?
Well, there are. Well, first of all, the I want to dispel the myth that mushrooms are a drug. and need to be used like a drug. We consider them more to be functional foods or superfoods. And so their best value is not if they're just used once or twice or for a week, but if they become incorporated into the lifestyle, the daily tasks, that a pet might have. Because the longer you take them, the better they work. And even in something as far as the immune system, over time, it actually improves immune system response. A month later, it's going to be a lot better than after a week on it. And it gets to be so good as far as their immune response that you can even stop the mushrooms for a day or two or for a week or two, and you still will retain that same value. So it's not really drug-like. They have a word for it. It's called a biological response modifier, which means it's not a drug, but it modifies the response of the organism to something. So okay, but that being said, different mushrooms have different properties to them. They all contain many of the same um, um, ingredients that have the health benefits, but each mushroom has slightly different ingredients, which might have more potency for different types of conditions. Like, let me talk about my currently favorite mushroom. I keep going. Every week I have a different favorite mushroom. This week, my favorite mushroom is cordyceps. And cordyceps is an amazing mushroom. It's been thought of to be used over the years, for performance and stamina. But cordyceps also has, a number of other properties to it, including um, um, having an anti-cancer property and having an anti-pain property. So if I wanted to use the cordyceps in a patient who, let's say, had arthritis, or let's say it's a search and rescue dog that needs to have a little bit of a boost, when he's out in the field, or let's say it's even just a pet who wants to go for a hike with his parent, but needs to have a little bit of a boost as far as analgesia or as far as energy. So then cordyceps might be something that we would want to use. Another mushroom, which is a little different than cordyceps, would be reishi. Reishi is Ganoderma, and it's called the mushroom of immortality, and historically is probably one of the most prominent mushrooms that has been used by humans for thousands of years. Reishi actually has ingredients in it that have antihistaminic properties. So if you have an animal or yourself that has allergies, the reishi will have that and will help to reduce the symptoms of it. But the immune modulating part of the reishi, the beta glucans, will help the immune system to settle down and not be quite as reactive to things like pollen. And we can go on and on. Turkey tail has been very prominent in the minds of many pet parents whose pets have cancer because of some published studies using extracts of the turkey tail that showed a benefit for dogs that have a very nasty cancer called hemangiosarcoma, which is a cancer of the spleen. So it goes on and on and on, and each mushroom has its special, its secret sauce, its special value, and then you can kind of combine them together. So that's where I'm really having a lot of fun working with this company, which is, first of all, putting together a bunch of educational material, because there's so much education that's needed. It's a complicated area. It's not simple. Cannabis was simple. CBD, bingo. But mushrooms, they've got so much in them, and each one's a little different. You've got 10 different mushrooms, 15 different mushrooms that all have these values. So I'm not meaning to confuse you, but I'm just trying to give you sort of a broad brush overview of how we would use mushrooms clinically, but also how a pet parent might, in the absence of advice from a veterinarian, because many veterinarians are just not going to be knowledgeable yet. I'm working on it. So even a pet parent can figure it out. They're not dangerous at all. There's no toxicity. They're safe at any speed. The worst thing that happens if you give an awful lot of mushrooms is that it costs you a little more. But some pets might get diarrhea, especially if you give them a high dosage right away. So, no, mushrooms have a great deal of value to use as a foundation for health, in our patients and in our pets.
And I want to add to your favorite. I was waiting for you to mention it, Dr. Silver, and you didn't. And I know it's near and dear to your heart. Cordyceps The mushroom that you mentioned initially is great. We like to recommend it for cats because it's a tasty mushroom, and it's also cordyceps, in addition to having the anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, being an adaptogen, so giving energy. It also has an affinity for the kidneys and also for the lungs. So it's a mushroom that I know, Doc Rob, that you've been talking a lot about cordyceps for cats in some of our other conversations. So we don't want to leave the cats out, because sometimes we hear from cat people that think we're too dog centered. So
I didn't want to take down quite to that level of complexity.
okay.
But thank you for bringing that up. And cordyceps. If you like mushrooms, if you like to eat mushrooms yourself, there's two mushrooms. One are called morels, and the other are called truffles. And these are prized edible mushrooms. And cordyceps is in the same family as them, so it has a really nice taste. And as a formulator of products for pets, the most important thing, first of all, is it palatable? And cordyceps is. And so because of its value for the kidneys, because of its value for the lungs, because of its value for the immune system, for a cat, it's an easy thing to mix a little bit of powder into their wet food every day. Not much, an eighth of a teaspoon, a quarter of a teaspoon. Our stuff is very, very, concentrated and potent, so you don't need much. A little bit goes a long way.
I'm actually glad you brought up cats and palatability, because it inevitably, when I am looking at supplements and I am trying to figure out whether it's for my own pets or for someone I'm trying to help with their pets, I know I have a toolbox of all of these wonderful supplements that can benefit whatever is going on, but realistically, what are we actually going to be able to get into this pet? And generally, that's a broader spectrum for a dog than for a cat. It's like, for cats, it's like, okay, well, I've got 10 items here, and maybe 2 of them I'm going to be able to get in that cat, right?
And that's the quandary of the holistic veterinarian as well, because our medicine is based on supplements in part, acupuncture and other types of things, but supplements. And with cats, you're limited, and that it's a real art to figure out which is the most palatable and most important thing to get started with, and you kind of have to do it that way. I also have an approach for medicating cats that might be good to share here, which is that if you start a cat with a teeny amount of a new taste of something, and you put it in some really good food, so they're going to eat it. Once the cat gets a little sense of what that taste is or what that flavor is in a small amount, so it's not threatening to its fears of something new that might be toxic, then you can gradually start to increase the amount you're giving until you can reach as close to the optimal dosage, or maybe actually reach the optimal dosage. Cats' livers, they don't do such a good job of detoxifying, not like dogs or horses or humans. And so over the millennia, they have had to evolve to be suspicious about the food they're eating. And if you've ever fed a dog, put their food bowl down, man, they just kind of swoop in, inhale it, and go. A cat, same food, same location, same time every day, they still sniff it before they eat it. If you've noticed that, that's because they're comparing the odor, because that's the best, most complicated chemical factory there is, in our noses. They're checking to see if there's something new in there because they survived eating yesterday's meal. So they want to see if they're going to survive today's meal. So starting with a small amount, I think you can kind of trick them into not being as suspicious about a new taste in their food.
That's a very good tip for our cat parents out there, and me. Being a cat parent, it can be tough, as y'all know. So, we're talking about mushrooms being a functional food. Are there any contraindications that we should be aware of? So, like, maybe a dog or a cat is taking some sort of medication. Would there be any instance in which we couldn't add mushrooms in?
Well, Generally, we believe mushrooms are very safe, and there's very little informational literature. We've recently done a review of the literature. We have a naturopathic physician who's also in our company. He works mostly on the human side and mostly the pet side. But we tried to do a review of the literature to see what really did the literature say about these possible interactions. I mean, there's so many drugs out there. I mean, it's impossible to test for all of them. But in general, what we see is that mushrooms are quite safe no matter what else you're taking. We worry about anticoagulant medication because it can oftentimes be very critically important to the health of the human or to the animal. Animals aren't commonly on anticoagulants very, very frequently. So and there's always the possibility that there's an idiosyncratic reaction that some animal, that even though it's very safe, one animal it's not. So that's why I always recommend, no matter what, whether they're on a drug or not on a drug, that you start with a lower dosage and you work your way up gradually over a period of a couple of weeks, and checking in with the animal's symptoms or whatever it is they're being treated for, or inform your veterinarian or take the animal into the veterinarian to be checked for that. But I think that's the safest way to go. So no, there are no specific contraindications, but life is complicated. There could be some problems. Take it slow when you get started, I think, is the best advice.
Yeah, and I hope this is okay to mention. I mean, because there are, clinical studies out there around this, even with, some pretty significant medications like chemotherapy. Mushrooms have been shown to, actually support, can be used in conjunction. So that's one of the things I love about mushrooms is when you have a pet parent that's dealing with a serious issue, it's not an either or situation. It can be, both can be recommended. And more, I mean, Dr. Silver and I are at conventions all over the country. Dr. Silver's speaking everywhere. I mean, like every veterinary conference, he's speaking at the AHVMA, which is the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association conference. In October, he's speaking at an animal hospice conference. In September, he has been speaking at different veterinary conferences like the Fetch conferences, acupuncture conferences. And more veterinarians we've had more veterinarians sign up for practitioner wholesale accounts with real mushrooms than any other type of practitioner this past year. So veterinarians are, even though they're, as Dr. Silver mentioned, there's this mycophobia, and for good reason, because they see these animals that have eaten poison mushrooms. Veterinarians are getting on board. Veterinary oncologists are getting on board. And so if you have, I encourage pet parents, like if you're dealing with a serious issue with your pet, you might be surprised if you talk to your veterinarian that they're becoming more and more understanding about what mushrooms are and what they can do.
Yeah, Joni, that's a good point, by the way, because when you talk about interactions, I was immediately going to the bad interactions, but there actually are good interactions too. For instance, like you're saying with chemotherapy, a lot of studies show that with the use of mushrooms, you improve your outcomes and you reduce your side effects. Oftentimes, chemotherapy or radiation will knock out the bone marrow, so you wind up getting anemic, or you have too few white blood cells to fight disease. Mushrooms actually stimulate the stem cells in the bone marrow, so you can produce more red blood cells. So, I mean, that was a really good point, Joni. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Rob.
So you, Dr. Silver, said a word that I'm somewhat familiar with, but I think anytime I mention it on social media, everybody's like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. I don't know what this word is. And that's adaptogen.
Oh, okay.
So I'm familiar with it in terms of full spectrum CBD hemp extract. But I understand that mushrooms are also adaptogens, and there are lots of like lavender is an adaptogen. So can you kind of just give me like a adaptogens for dummies? What does that word mean?
Some mushrooms, I should add,
okay.
not all mushrooms.
I'm sorry, Joni, what'd you say?
Not all mushrooms are adaptogens, only some
Most are.
mushrooms.
Most are, Joni. But adaptogens
Okay.
is a word that was invented to try to describe the actions of certain categories of plants and mushrooms, and it basically helps the body to adapt to stressors. So it's the organ that it focuses on is the adrenal glands, which are responsive to stress and produce the stress hormone, which is called cortisone, corticosteroids. Um, so the use of the word adaptogen is being misused and overused in our popular language today. Lavender is not an adaptogen.
Oh,
Most mushrooms are. Okay. Herbs like ginseng and astragalus and ashwagandha, rhodiola, those are considered to be adaptogens. So, it's just a category, and it's the fact that the mushrooms and many of these other herbs support stress is a very valuable thing. Um, so that's basically why what an adaptogen is. It's questionable. There's controversy. I was at this conference a couple of weeks ago, the International Herb Symposium, with a vet, with an herbalist named um, 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 forgot his name. Sorry. Anyway, he wrote the book on adaptogens, and I had a conversation with him, and he said we're not quite certain yet that CBD or cannabis really can be considered to be an adaptogen. There's some pros about that and cons about that, but you have to see some impact on the adrenal gland and on the adrenal pituitary axis in order for it to be considered an adaptogen. So that would be the main definition of it. But that's a good property that most mushrooms have is they help with stress. Many mushrooms like lion's mane, for instance, or even reishi and tremella can have a settling effect on the nervous system in which it can reduce stress, it can reduce anxiety and agitation. I have a product. Real Mushrooms has a product that I designed for them that uses two of the adaptogenic mushrooms, the reishi and lion's mane, and then we combine it with some tryptophan and theanine, which is what gives green tea its zen. Tryptophan, as you know, is an amino acid that when you take larger amounts of it than your body needs just for everyday maintenance, it actually produces serotonin. And serotonin is the calming neurotransmitter. And so it has some herbs as well in it, like lemon balm and passion flower and catnip and valerian, all of which also have calming properties. So we can certainly reduce stress with those two adaptogenic mushrooms using that formula.
And I should add that relax formula that Dr. Silver mentioned, many cats will eat it. The wisdom of putting catnip in the chew, I think, has, it's another way possibly to get mushrooms into cats is with these chews that Dr. Silver's talking
Yeah,
about.
they're kind of dog-sized chews, like 4.5 grams, but they crumble really easily, and cats don't like the mouth feel of a really big chew like that. But if you crumble it into little pieces, or
Yeah,
even blend that in with their wet food, many are accepting of it.
yeah.
In my household, I have two cats, both of whom will accept those chews, which is good.
so with the Real Mushrooms line of supplements, where from what I'm understanding, you are taking different mushrooms that you're finding work really well together to support an animal through X
Yes,
and blending them together, and
yes.
possibly even other herbs that are going to help support them. So it's not necessarily just mushrooms in the mix.
Exactly. Mushrooms, as I mentioned, can sometimes take a little bit of time to build up, although we will see fairly immediate results with lion's mane, let's say, and reishi in terms of their calming. So by adding other herbs or other amino acids or glandulars or things such as that, we can increase the potency and maybe increase the rate at which the animal starts to show some benefits from it. Tryptophan, it's like almost immediate in terms of what it does. That's why some people will take it at night, before bed. So so I have 40 years or 25 years of experience formulating these products. I did over 40 products for this veterinary company over 25 years before I left them for real mushrooms. So I've developed this expertise in that area that takes into account palatability, takes into account the ingredients we want to use, and uses the right dosages of them, the right amounts of them in the products in order to actually create change. Because if a product doesn't work, people might buy it initially because it's good marketing or it's got a pretty label, but if it doesn't work, they're not going to buy that second bottle, and it's the repeat that we're really looking for.
And we have a really exciting new product coming out in the next few months that Dr. Silver formulated that's going to be a blend of like all the most exciting herbs and nutritional ingredients that people are talking about right now. But I did want to add that right now in our current line, we have the chews, which are blends, and we have a product called 5 Defenders, which is a blend of 5 different mushrooms, turkey tail reishi, maitake, shiitake, and chaga. But the rest of the line is single mushrooms. So you can buy a bottle of Real Mushrooms for Pets turkey tail. All it has in it is turkey tail mushroom. The lion's mane for pets. All it has is lion's mane in it. So we have the single mushrooms, and then we also have the blends, and there are more blends that are going to be coming as Dr. Silver continues to create them.
I'm just getting started, and we wanted to start by putting the existing products into more of a pet-sized capsule or pet-sized format. Now we're looking at doing these combinations, like the product that Joni is referring to, taking way too long. We're both very impatient about getting it out into the market, but it will be out there fairly soon. And it's just the beginning of that type of powdered, scoopable meal topper that would have some function as well, using mushrooms and other types of ingredients in it. So that's really my wheelhouse. And it's like, I like cooking, but I also like, it's the same kind of creative, inventive process when I make these formulas. So it's fun.
Yeah, and it's fun because we get it. Dr. Silver puts the formula together, and then we all get little packets in the mail to try with our pets, and then we give feedback. Going back to that palatability thing.
Yeah,
so it's
what's the point in spending? As much money and time you have to spend in terms of creating a product, it has to, be acceptable, and it has to work, and it's a pretty high bar. And we want to make sure. So that's why we farm it out to many of our people that work for Real Mushrooms to find out, does it work? Does it taste good? Those sorts of things. And then we'll change it if it's not the way we need it to be in order to make it better.
Well, I appreciate both sides of what you were talking about, Joni, because getting just a single mushroom and that's all you're getting in the product can be really beneficial for those people who have a dog or a cat with sensitivities to various items, even, food flavor additives and things like that. But then with the blends, we're getting the expertise of Dr. Silver and in other cases, other formulators who are putting foods, they're putting herbs, foods, whatever it may be, amino acids and all these different things together to elicit a certain reaction or response in the body. And so we get the best of both worlds, which is wonderful. I appreciate that very much. So before I let you go, I heard something that stuck with me, and it's from a pretty reputable source, so I think it's true, but I want to ask your opinions of it.
Oh boy.
Of course was a TikTok, because where do we get our information from these days, right? But it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. So I think he's a reputable source. And he said that mushrooms are so interesting and are so beneficial to people. He was talking about humans. He doesn't do much with animals. And he said it's because they are so beneficial to us because mushrooms are actually closer genetically to humans than they are to other plants.
True.
And I'm wondering if that is true and if that could be potentially why they are so beneficial.
Joni?
It's 100% true.
Mhm.
Wow, humans and animals share more DNA with fungi than fungi share with plants. We have so much in common with them, and yeah, I mean, personally, I feel like this is, I mean, mushrooms are going to heal the planet. They're going to, they're really, I mean, there's mushrooms that are eating radiation in Chernobyl. There's mushrooms that are, recycling plastic and, I mean, in addition to all the things that they can do for us therapeutically. Yeah, no, that's a true statement. And it's kind of fascinating. And I'm sure you have more to add to that, Rob, as far as the science behind it.
Yeah, well, what we've discovered is that the animal kingdom and the fungal kingdom both evolved from the same ancestor, same single-celled ancestor. And the estimates are about 30% of our DNA of animals is shared with the fungal kingdom. That's all animals. So that's a very true statement. And I do believe that it is probably one reason why mushrooms can be so beneficial. At the same time, I think it's the same reason why fungal infections can be so toxic. I think it's a double-edged sword in that regard.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
But mushrooms are a good way to fight fungal infections. I call it like cures like, or fighting fire with fire,
Well, yeah, that like feeding like healing like is a pretty foundational principle of Chinese medicine and homeopathy. Yeah. So there's a lot of that in the world that we ignore today in our society that I think I appreciate people like you who are trying to bring it all back and say, look, we need to come back to nature because she has an answer for everything.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
This is true. Yeah. And
Yeah.
this is true. And we're in a crisis state right now with the planet. And I certainly hope that fungi can heal the planet.
Yeah. We need all the help we can get. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do. So Real Mushrooms, it's realmushrooms.com.
Correct.
Where people can find the products. Yes.
Yes.
And on social media everywhere as Real Mushrooms.
Exactly. And I should mention the last Thursday of every month. So it's actually, today is Thursday that we're recording. We do a live Facebook Q&A, on our Real Mushrooms for Pets page. And so that's when me and Doc Rob are just live and answering people's questions. Tonight we're going to be, we get a lot of questions about dosage. How much should I give my pet of this or that? My pet's dealing with this, whether it's a mild, moderate, or severe issue, how should I titrate the mushrooms? So this should be an exciting Facebook Live tonight. And then they're all recorded and they're available on our Real Mushrooms website. So if anybody is out there and wants to listen to the Q&As, they're there on our website as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing up the dosing because it is inevitably I see it so much with CBD. And now that everybody is aware of mushrooms, they're starting to ask the same questions of mushrooms.
Yeah.
Is it a similar thing? Like we just got to figure out what works for it's very individual. Is that what you're seeing with mushrooms?
It is individual. It's not quite like CBD, but similar in certain ways. Before I became an expert on mushrooms, I was and still am an expert on CBD in pets. But it's complicated because a lot of it depends on the severity of the condition, how much you want to use. A lot of it depends on the actual potency of the individual product. And, if we've got, let's say, 10 different mushrooms, and we've got 3 different products for each mushroom that have a different amount in them. So, and then so many different weights for animals, from a little 5-pound, toy to a 150-pound giant. It's hard to just give a very simple answer. How much do I give for my pet? And so that's the challenge, because the pet parent wants it to be simple. Just tell me, doc. The veterinarian, well, how many mgs per kgs is that, doc? So got to find the balance point, or maybe create, dosing recommendations on both sides. And I don't like using the word dosage, because a dosage implies it's a medical product, like a drug or something. So I like to use the word administration guidelines, or administration guidance, just because we're trying to be sensitive to the constraints that the FDA places on us in terms of our language and our claims. But it is basically dosage.
Awesome. So you're, I guess, providing this range of recommended starting amounts. But it's important to know that that's a recommendation, and the goal, I would assume, is to use the smallest amount necessary to get the desired result. No?
Well, not necessarily. Yeah.
It's not really that expensive when you compare it to drugs and really, expensive drugs. So, and we don't really have precise understandings of exactly how much you need to give to get an exact benefit. And we know they're super, super safe. So I believe that Tony's shaking her head, because we'd rather have you give a little more than they need than a little less than they need, especially if you're treating a critical disease. We don't like using the word cancer, because that gets the FDA's attention, but cancer is probably the highest calling for mushrooms. And one of the reasons why many pet parents who normally wouldn't think about mushrooms, they get that diagnosis, mushrooms, So if it's an animal that has something like that, you don't want to make the mistake of giving too little, and so more seems to be better in that case.
Yeah, I was agreeing and nodding. And I would also say, with most mushrooms, I guess I'm not a CBD expert, but I think in some cases, CBD is given, and not in all cases, but for maybe more acute issues. So you can kind of you can titrate and see a difference. Whereas with mushrooms, that's not the case. Mushrooms are they have more of a long-term benefit. You're not going to give your dog mushrooms, and later that day, see a difference, unless you're giving like the relaxed chews that, that have other ingredients in it that might, have a settling effect. So, when you're dealing with a serious illness or whatever, because of the high safety of mushrooms, I always recommend giving more, and of course you don't want to cause diarrhea, because that, so you want to titrate it up slowly, but yeah, I believe the more the better.
Okay, and that's because it's a functional food.
It's a food. Yeah, it's a whole food, basically.
And not just more, but also consistent with it as well. It should be given on a daily basis. You could, I think once they've been on it for a month, you could probably, skip weekends. And I think you'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've done a month of every day. That's this training effect that it has on the immune system. This long-term effect it has, this long-term benefit.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you answering all of my questions. I try to ask the questions to you that people ask me the most, so we can get the most benefit out of the short amount of time that we have. But I think this was incredibly educational and informative, and I know people who are already using real mushrooms with their dogs and like the product. I will be very honest, I haven't purchased it yet, but I'm going to an event next month and I'm going to be getting some for free. So
which event are you going to?
I'm going to the Nautical Dog. That's why I'm going back to Virginia.
Yeah, we just sent them mushrooms. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I just saw that this morning, and they got a huge shipment. And so they're giving anybody who purchased tickets to come see Dr. Judy Morgan speak is getting some real mushrooms. So I'm really excited to try them out with my dog.
Yes. And then we'll also be in Chicago, and we'll be at the spa, Carrie Hyde's, the spa out in California. We'll be out there too. So I don't know if you're familiar with that event, but that's the Thriving Pet Expo. We'll be there as well. And,
awesome.
And I'm going to send you, let's exchange, get your address. I can send you, Rob hates when I use this term. I'll send you a poo-poo platter of samples to try. To try out. I love it. I say it just to get that look on Rob's face when I say it.
How about a charcuterie board of samples?
A charcuterie board, yes. Yeah, okay, that sounds better.
No, I appreciate it because my followers know I am completely honest about everything I post.
Sure.
If I like it, if I don't like it, my dog, it's not about me. It's about what my dog likes or will eat and won't eat, or what my cats will eat or won't eat. And I'm just honest about it because I think people need to know. And I don't certainly want to send people down a road where they wind up spending a ton of money and then their pets either won't eat it or don't get the benefit from it. And that's why having not just the education portion that you're providing today, but also all of the testing and formulation that you're doing, Dr. Silver, to make sure that it is palatable is so important. So important.
But what pet do you have, Jessica, so we can tailor our little care package?
I have a dog who is going to be 10 in October. She's a little, Embark said Chihuahua and Poodle primarily, but she looks like a terrier to us. And she's awesome. The only issues I have with her are anxiety and anxiety. So we're working on that now. And I currently have 4 cats. They're all 14, 15 years old. And my listeners know Romeo, one of my older cats who's 15, he has resorptive disease and he just had 17 teeth pulled. He only has 6 left in his mouth. And it was an ordeal, but we got through it.
You'll be happier without those diseased teeth, though.
Yeah.
It'll be less painful.
He is much happier now. It was a struggle getting through the first 5 days after it happened, especially because it was a weekend, but he's awesome now. He's so happy now.
Mm-hmm. So yes, it definitely sounds like with 4 cats, some cordyceps is in the in the future for you.
Yeah, and good news. That's what I sent to Nautical Dog. I sent cordyceps, chaga, and reishi. Okay. So make sure you get a bottle of that cordyceps, Jessica. If it's not in your swag bag, you'll probably be able to trade with somebody else. And thinking I'll send you some lion's mane. I'll send you the relaxed chews. The lion's mane is great for aging dogs, great for cognitive function, can also have some calming effect. The relaxed chews would be great also for your dog's anxiety issues. Yeah. And I'll send something for you too.
Oh, believe me, I need it. So I think I spend more on supplements for me than I do my pets, and that is saying something. So
well, we make an amazing hot chocolate, not for the pets, but for you. And so I'll send you some of that to try, which is therapeutic, but is also fun.
Yummy, yummy, yummy. Well, thank you both so much. Sure. And I highly recommend to all of our listeners, please check out the Real Mushrooms social medias. Go ahead and check out what is going on their website and see if anything speaks to you. Because I know when I go to a website, something always speaks to me. And I thank you for doing the live Q&As the last Thursday of every month. Put it on your calendar. That's what I have to do to make sure I am there when I need to be somewhere. Put it on your calendar the last Thursday of every month to check out the Real Mushrooms Facebook page. And thank you again, Joni and Dr. Silver. I appreciate you both so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Yeah,
Really
it's been fun.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure that you're following the show so you never miss an episode. And please take a moment to rate the show on your podcast app. I'd also love it if you'd share this podcast with your friends and family so that they can benefit from the information to help their pets live long, happy lives too. Don't forget to take advantage of this special discount as a listener today and get access to over 100 online videos in my online dog training, The Furry Family Coach. Just go to thefurryfamilycoach.com and use code PODCAST at checkout to get your first month for only $7. That's thefurryfamilycoach.com and use code PODCAST at checkout to get your first month for only $7. I can't wait to have you join and see you on the inside.